Completely changed everything. It was as if we had a map of the Earth without the Pacific Ocean on it, because we didn't know it was there.
The Kuiper Belt is the most remote part of the solar system. Here, trillions of frozen lumps of water, ammonia, and methane circle the distant sun.
The Kuiper Belt is what we call the third zone of the solar system. This is what we think is the most primitive region, a zone of icy objects beyond Neptune's orbit.
Incredibly, by the early 2000s, our telescopes become powerful enough to just make out these unbelievably distant objects.
We found Sedna and Eris and Makemake and Haumea and Ixion and more.
We now know of more than 2,000, Kuiper Belt objects.
This is the solar system's new frontier. And in 2006, a new probe is primed to leave Earth on a mission to explore it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff as New Horizons spacecraft.
It just shoots up so fast. It's the fastest launch ever from Earth.
As soon as we were launched, we had to test all the backup systems and plan the most sophisticated flyby of Jupiter that had ever taken place.
Even with the extra kick from Jupiter's gravity, it will still take 10 long years to reach the Kuiper Belt.
In order to ensure that it was going to last for the decade, they built in a lot of redundancy. There were sort of two of everything, computers and the guidance systems. And they figured out how to hibernate. The first spacecraft that hibernated.
But it had really never been done before, to put the spacecraft largely to sleep, let the spacecraft just silently coast. Then we could extend the life of the electronics. No spacecraft mission had ever really used hibernation as a day-to-day way to cross the solar system.
That was scary because, you turn it off and you hope that it comes back on again.
New Horizons' first target is the Kuiper Belt's most famous resident.
The discovery of Pluto was back in 1930 when Clyde Tombaugh, a Kansas farm boy who was using the telescope at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona.
Every clear night, Clyde would go out and take images of the sky on photographic plates. And when it was cloudy or during the day, he would compare those plates.
When you're looking out at the sky, how do you tell something is a star versus a planet? Well, planets actually move relative to the stars, and that's because they're much closer to us than the stars. So when Clyde Tombaugh noticed that there was this little speck moving across the stars.
And then Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto.
It is crowned the 9th planet, a title Pluto enjoys for 76 years. But while New Horizons continues its decade-long voyage, a debate rages back on Earth. One that will challenge Pluto's very status as a planet.
According to the International Astronomical Union, a planet has to be orbiting the sun.
It needs to be large enough and massive enough that its gravity can pull itself into a spherical shape.
And it has to have cleared its zone, meaning that it is sort of the gravitational bully of its own realm.
The problem is, Pluto's region of the Kuiper Belt is packed with hundreds of icy objects.
Pluto doesn't meet the criteria for being a planet, as it hasn't cleared its orbit.
By that definition, Pluto clearly belongs to a different sort of grouping.
Pluto is now classified as a dwarf planet, along with the other larger worlds of the Kuiper Belt. But the debate still continues.
I think planetary scientists really never stopped calling Pluto a planet.
Pluto is what it is. It doesn't make any difference whether we call it a planet, a full-fledged planet versus a dwarf planet.
Defining them and labeling is really a side thing. It's a periphery to the important thing, which is exploration.
We are searching for frequency. Stand by. Stand by for telemetry.
After 9 years of flight, NASA attempts to reawaken New Horizons from hibernation.
The first words he said were, "Alan, we've lost contact with the spacecraft."
All of a sudden I get a message that the spacecraft is shut down. I couldn't believe it.
It was heart-stopping. And here we had just days until the flyby was to begin, to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
9 years of faultless space travel would all be a waste if New Horizons couldn't be brought back online.
It wasn't easy, but they pulled it off with precisely 3.5 hours to spare.
We are in lock with telemetry with the spacecraft.
$3.7 billion miles from the sun.
New Horizons gives us our first close-up glimpses of the most distant world ever visited. A world that until now had only appeared as a fuzzy blob.
We thought the surface would be geologically dead because Pluto is so small.
When New Horizons came by and took all of these pictures, it literally broke everything we thought about it.
Pluto was a shock and a revelation in so many ways.
It's turned out to be one of the most fascinating objects in our entire solar system.
Giant water ice mountains as high as the Rocky Mountains in the United States. Bladed terrain.
We're seeing ancient parts of Pluto, but also ridiculously young parts of Pluto.
We even think we see dunes which get blown around by the very thin atmosphere.
Small planets should be simpler, and they should run out of energy in their internal engines and stop evolving like the moon did billions of years ago. Pluto didn't read any of those textbooks.
One of the most fascinating features beamed back by New Horizons is the region named after the planet's discoverer, Tombau Regio.
We got our first full-frame view of Pluto and saw this region that looked like a heart, this heart-shaped region.
The western lobe of the heart is called Sputnik Planitia, a giant plain of frozen nitrogen, methane, and carbon monoxide that stretches for over 330,000 square miles. And at its edge lies a range of mountains made of frozen water ice. They rise nearly 4 miles into the dark skies above the plate. As odd as that is, there is something even weirder about the region.
It's the size of the states of Texas and Oklahoma combined, and we can't find any craters on its surface.
There are almost no impact craters on this, which means something is happening on the surface.
Pluto's heart is young, fresh ice. So what's creating it?
It's smooth, but it wasn't completely smooth. It had this beautiful pattern of sort of cells or polygons.
Detailed imagery beamed back by New Horizons reveals a puzzling network of hexagon and pentagon shapes. That crisscross the frozen nitrogen surface.
It looks like there's material that's convecting underneath, like soup on the stove. You have these things turning over, making these shapes on the top. So we scratched our heads and wondered what could be making this strange behavior.
Our working theory is that somewhere deep in Pluto's interior are radioactive elements that generate heat as they decay, warming up a liquid layer beneath the planet's crust.
We think underneath the exotic ices on Pluto's surface and underneath the water ice crust, which could easily be 100 kilometers thick, that there's actually a layer of liquid water that surrounds the rock core.
This sunless ocean of water that has existed for billions of years beneath the surface of Pluto is being gently warmed by heat from the interior.
That little bit of heat that's leaking out, we think, is enough to drive the convection and these exotic patterns that we see on Sputnik Planitia. And that's because nitrogen it's very soft. It doesn't take very much heat to make it move.
As the nitrogen slowly bubbles up, the area is constantly being resurfaced, scouring away any impact craters.
It's warmer underneath, so then the glacial ices are upwelling in the middle and then spread out and then downwell on the side, and that's what makes those polygonal patterns that we see on the surface. We had no idea to expect that.
But why all this activity here and nowhere else? Perhaps Pluto's heart is the site of a huge impact that long ago punched a large hole in the surface, almost down to the vast ocean beneath. A great hole that slowly filled with soft nitrogen ice, and now gently churns just above a warmer ocean.
So there's a lot more going on Pluto than we had ever imagined.
You don't have to be a giant planet or a terrestrial planet to be an amazing place in the solar system.
It just completely changed our view of how small planets operate and how they can be as complex as big ones.
New Horizons' closest encounter with Pluto lasts just hours. Its fleeting visit reveals the tiny speck that Clyde Tombaugh saw moving across the sky to be a dynamic, vibrant world. But Tombaugh died 9 years before New Horizons left Earth, so he never saw Pluto up close.
He had asked if a mission ever did get launched, some of his ashes could be sent on the journey.
And to think that Clyde's ashes, flew by Pluto, and, he was finally visiting the place that he discovered. That was pretty cool.
And Pluto holds a final surprise. As New Horizons turns its camera back for one last look, it captures an image of Pluto's atmosphere, glowing in the dark.
There's the blue ring of its atmosphere, looking hauntingly familiar like the Earth's atmosphere.
Not only can we see a number of layers in the atmosphere, but we can also see mountains on the surface of the planet sticking up into that atmosphere.
A thin blue sky over a hidden ocean of water, 3 billion miles from Earth.
That image just epitomized everything we had done.
That's my favorite picture from the entire flyby. And I took to saying that the solar system had saved the best for last.
But New Horizons isn't done. It expands its exploration of the Kuiper Belt by continuing on towards a new target.
This was an opportunity for the New Horizons spacecraft to now look at a different object out in the Kuiper Belt, something that might be much more typical of what could be found out in this region.
On January 1st, 2019, it beamed back pictures of the most distant object ever visited.
This object may be the most primitive object ever encountered by a spacecraft.
2 icy rocks, frozen in the moment of collision.
By looking at this today, we think we're looking back in time to the origin of the solar system.
A window into the processes that created the solar system that we call home. New Horizons gives us a glimpse of our origins, before it follows Voyager on an eternal journey out into the stars. Just 6 decades ago, we left Earth for the first time. Since then, we've gone on to explore the whole expanse of the solar system. With each flight, curiosity has driven us further.
For us to continue doing something that's very natural and intrinsic to all of us, and that is answering the big questions and exploring the unknown.
And as our technology has evolved, each encounter has taken us closer.
I think exploring the planets is just, it's a great adventure that we can all participate in.
We've landed robotic explorers on Mars, Venus, and even a distant moon of Saturn.
I feel as though we're absolutely just at the beginning of planetary exploration.
These first steps have only scratched the surface. But they reveal a solar system of limitless wonder and beauty.
there's still more for us to discover. There's still more surprises out there.
There's a lot of exploration left for us.
As we continue to push farther and stay longer in our quest to piece together one of the greatest stories ever told. The story of the planets.